At that moment, a young lady's voice called from behind her. Fiona. She felt a bit awkward, guessing the voice was reluctant. She turned around and caught sight of a handsome face. The orange hair was indeed Viscount Clovis. He raised a finger to his chin and called her by the fake name she had once told him. Miss Celine. She was startled, the name Aaron Clovis, Viscount Clovis, flashing in her mind. At that moment, Fiona smiled dangerously, noticing he seemed uneasy, and thought, Aaron Clovis? Why on earth would I meet this exact person here? The Viscount looked at her thoughtfully and asked, You said your name is Celine, right? Her inner self screamed, Damn it! Isn't he going to pull me into some corner and ask questions? At this rate, I should eliminate him first. The Viscount sighed again and said, My previous proposal is still good, because there's no better position than the Master of Halo. She stared at him thinking, I thought he would try to hold on a bit longer. Perhaps because, unlike the rules, Halo had become her backing, he didn't dare to approach without reason. Then I'm even more relaxed. He looked at Fiona suspiciously and asked again, And she wasn't worried about the Duke Anista's proposal and replied, Why should I be? She was really brave, he said. But in her mind, she thought differently. I'm not worried, because that's my area of expertise. He continued, Really? Before you go, I have one curious question about the accusation documents in the Green family's records. They were sent by you, right? She thought for a moment. Yes. Aaron said he was the one handling the Green case. So the matter was resolved so quickly? She straightforwardly replied, That's right. Hearing her honest answer, he pondered a bit and continued, That helped me a lot. However, I'm curious. Do you feel uncomfortable with me because I contributed to your family's bankruptcy? He asked cautiously. She thought, Is that why I'm not listed in that family? Then she said, Not at all. Viscount Aaron put his hand on his chest, bowed slightly and said, Good. I don't want to confront the Halo family. Turning around, he continued, I hope you achieve good results. She smiled and waved goodbye, thinking, Good. No need to assassinate him anymore. She told herself, Now, let's go home. Suddenly, a hand reached out near her hair, patting her head repeatedly, making her cry out, There, Duke. I thought you left earlier. Duke Aben finally spoke. If my daughter is here, where else could I go? Looks like you used all your brain power earlier, huh? You deliberately challenged Duke Ernest with that proposal, didn't you? Being exposed by the Duke, she rubbed her head, thinking, Indeed, he's sharp enough to notice. She replied, This is the simplest way. If left as is, he'll complain to the Emperor. It's troublesome, and if my status in the noble circle drops, it will be hard to operate. The Duke looked at her gently and smiled approvingly. Exactly. Well done. Then he made a teasing face and patted her head. The Duke looked at her gently, then smiled and praised. That's right. Well done. After speaking, he made a very suggestive face and patted her head. I really know how to pick people. So now, call me father, will you? She was speechless, still unwilling to give up. Not liking the Duke, but still persistent. Not Xiaojian also does not trust and speculates it must be an imposter. There's no way a 3-year-old girl could survive on the northern battlefield. Moreover, she doesn't even know magic. All of us know about Fiona Green. Count Green brought her here, the useless, illegitimate child locked in the attic. We have prepared a thorough plan to push that child to her death, but no one felt guilty about it. At this moment, the Countess loudly ordered to expel her immediately. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out, I am the imposter, SAO. Outrageous. The steward was startled and hurried forward to stop the young lady. Without the lady's permission, you cannot enter. Fiona didn't care. She walked up to those 3 men. Long time no see. Her words stunned and confused those 3 men. Unable to believe it, Fiona smiled. After finishing a long journey, I have returned. Fiona slowly took out the paper. Calmly said, I have received the death certificate you sent. But I dislike showing my face to you more than the death certificate. She firmly placed the paper on the table and continued. However, I think you would prefer to meet in person, so I came here unexpectedly. Fiona clapped her hands and laughed happily. The cute youngest sibling hasn't been home for a long time. Surely you will be welcomed, right? It seems the family hasn't changed. I am very happy to see the 2 brothers studying intently. Fiona smiled innocently, confirming that truth. The morning sunlight shone into the room through the window frame. Beside her, clear bird songs echoed. Waking the little girl lying on the bed, Fiona woke up suddenly feeling something a bit strange. Thinking back, this is not Highland Castle but Count Green's house. Fiona sat up on the bed, She breathed in, feeling the fresh morning air. Fiona thought to herself, "Luckily they gave me a good room, so I slept well. I originally planned to turn hostile if they still kept me in the attic like before." She was pleased recalling that, but looking at their silly expressions yesterday was really interesting. Those people seemed to be divided and arguing over inheritance issues. She lazily lay down, not wanting to get involved. Better to sign the renunciation agreement and leave early. Immersed in her thoughts, Fiona was interrupted by a knock on the door, and a voice echoed, "Young Lady Fiona, I brought your face-washing water." Fiona stretched and said to the maid outside, "Come in." The maid brought the basin of water into the room and set it down. Fiona gently thanked her, seeing the basin water spilled on the floor. Fiona thought to herself to be careful. Water splashed out. Helen's maid wouldn't make such a mistake. Suddenly Fiona noticed, why is the basin water so dirty? The water smelled unpleasant too. She looked down carefully and realized this. This is laundry water. Looking at the dirty, murky basin in front of her, Fiona couldn't believe it. They gave me laundry water? Are you kidding me? How can you be so blatantly immature? Even if I am SAO, I still represent the family. Fighting for 5 years. Doing this is unacceptable. Fiona's mood was extremely upset. Just then, she heard giggling beside her. Fiona followed the laughter, saw a girl standing beside her, body trembling, trying to hold back laughter, laughing so obviously. Is this my maid? I think I have met her somewhere before. Looking closely at that person, Fiona suddenly remembered. 5 years ago it was the same face. She recalled the past. Maybe she was born like that. The maid kept tormenting Fiona just because she was an illegitimate child. Now Fiona suddenly realized, that's right. She couldn't be careless just because she was given a good room. Such behavior still being accepted means this family still sees me as a useless, illegitimate child. No matter what, the people in this house still seem to be mistaken about something. Fiona reached for the basin, thinking to herself, they still see me as a 3-year-old illegitimate child with no money, no place to go, no power like before. Treating me like that has made me hate it. Thinking about the suffering Fiona has endured even more than this. All this time, if I keep letting it be, it seems not good at all, Fiona asked the maid. I wonder what your name is, the maid answered confidently. I am May, Fiona praised. Very good, May. As far as I remember, we have met before, Fiona said while observing May, noticing that the maid kept staring at her. If it were a normal, noble family, they would never easily accept the reason she could behave so arbitrarily. It must be because the Countess values her, and what she is doing represents the Countess's intentions. Because the Countess herself doesn't like me, and now with the inheritance issue, I look even more like that GA in her eyes. Can a lowly, illegitimate child get even a single jewel? Not only she, but the entire Green family are worried about that while Fiona falls into her thoughts. Meanwhile, the maid inside is secretly despising her, thinking what a boring reaction that is. This stupid, illegitimate child doesn't realize she's being humiliated. If you don't know, let me teach you. The Countess wants you to cry your eyes out and then kick you out. May bowed her head, smirking maliciously. Fiona Green, a just-grown girl. It seems you were lucky to survive, and now planning to freeload off the family, right? Ridiculous, a lowly, illegitimate child like you. It's just an opportunity for me to strengthen the mistress's trust. I'll show you that there is no place for you in this house. She chuckled. Fiona gently called her. May, I know what you're trying to do. May raised her face, pretending not to understand, saying, I don't understand what you're talking about. Fiona paid no attention to Mayo's words. She covered her face with her hand and bowed down, trembling all over. Seeing Fiona's action, May sneered, crying, But this is all you can do? Are you really deluding yourself into thinking you're a real noble? At that moment, Fiona lowered her hand and suddenly slapped her hard on the face. May's face was slapped. Mayo came to her senses, no longer showing contempt. She didn't expect it and thought, she just slapped me. Is this still the Fiona abandoned in the attic? Fiona smiled brightly as if nothing happened, and said to May, even though these words were said yesterday, I'm glad this family hasn't changed. The maid who was hit got a bit angry, holding her face and shouting, What is everyone doing? Fiona is no longer the girl who was scolded and scared. She calmly asked the maid, Mayo, do you know what you did wrong? Looking at Fiona's aura, Mayo held her swollen cheek in panic, thinking how strange it was. Clearly it was her, and this smiling face was also her. But why is it like this? This suffocating fear, what is this feeling? Mayo pointed outside and threatened Fiona. Do you know you will get into trouble because of this? Miss Fiona, I will report this to the Countess immediately. If the Countess finds out about this, she definitely won't let it go. Before Mayo finished, she got slapped again. Fiona calmly asked her, I ask you, do you know what you did wrong? But May, what did you bring me? Mayo fearfully glanced at Fiona and stammered, That is Miss Fiona's facial cleanser. Seeing Mayo still not repentant made Fiona really angry. Suddenly the room burst into blazing flames. All the furniture fell clattering, as if an earthquake had just happened. Mayo sat down in fear. She couldn't believe what was happening before Miss Fiona. What on earth is this? Fiona approached Mayo, still using a gentle tone to ask, What's wrong, Mayo? Aren't you going to answer me? What is your fault? If you don't want to answer, then let's talk in the Highland way. Fiona bent down closer. She threatened. In Highland, servants who tease their masters casually will have their tongues cut off. Not sure what punishment the capital applies. Hearing Fiona say that, Mayo's face turned pale, her body trembling in fear, unable to speak, resigned. Since you won't say anything, I have no choice but to cut your tongue off like in Highland. After saying that, Fiona gently stroked the tear-streaked face of the maid. Fiona's action made Mayo scared and burst into tears. I am sorry, ma'am. Seeing Mayo stammering without completing a sentence, Fiona asked Mayo, Who am I? Mayo wiped her tears and sobbed, answering, The young lady Fiona of the Green Countess. Fiona asked Mayo, So what should you do? Mayo knelt down sincerely. I won't offend again. Please forgive me. Fiona turned and walked away. She nodded in satisfaction. That's right, it should be like that. Mayo looked up at Fiona's figure, thinking her mood had improved, then quickly got up. I have to quickly report to the mistress, if so, surely the mistress will stand up and resolve it justly. A basin of dirty laundry water was poured straight onto Mayo from behind, yet she remained calm. Where are you going? You have to deal with this. Mayo, who was arrogant earlier, now only felt extreme fear. Standing still without daring to utter a word, Fiona threw the basin to the ground and issued a warning. Remember not to pull that uninteresting trick again. Then you will really have to pay the price. I hope you understand. After that, she pushed the door and stepped outside, leaving Mayo soaked all over, standing frozen in place. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Annoyed, Fiona sighed, recalling what Sigrun had once told her. Fiona, you get angry too easily. Fiona walked on, but her mind was filled with endless, sorrowful thoughts. I think Sigrun was right. I thought I was an easygoing person, but I shouldn't have been like this from the start. These people not only haven't improved, but have gotten worse. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind Fiona. I wonder why you're wandering here. It seems you have nothing to do. Hearing that, Fiona turned around and saw the Countess, full of arrogance, approaching. Fiona thought to herself, Trouble always knows how to find me. Fiona calmly replied, I'm just wandering around my house. Hearing Fiona's words, the Countess opened her fan and smiled slightly. This is your house? It seems you're a bit delusional. Saying that, she waved her fan. Smiling with hidden meaning, looking at Fiona, Fiona really wanted to rush at her. Oh, she really wanted to slap her hard. Without letting Fiona say anything, the Countess turned and left. As she stepped up the stairs, she used a sarcastic tone, deliberately saying to her to abandon those illusions and pack up and leave. You're not a sewer rat to cling here for scraps. Fiona clenched her hands, suppressing her anger, staying calm. Stay calm, I am a rational person. But right after, she thought, No, now thinking back, why should I hold back? They caused trouble first, and I've held back enough already. If a fight is necessary, don't avoid it, but jump right in. That's Highland's motto. However, if I want to settle this with this family, I have to stay longer. Then there will be many things to do, and many things to consider. Now I understand, Fiona said to Theo. Thanks to that lady, madam. This statement made the Countess hesitate in her steps. Fiona smiled brightly and continued, Thank you for helping me feel that what I'm doing is right. The Countess looked puzzled and asked, What? Fiona didn't answer her. She fell into a state of thought. She didn't want to be bound to anyone, not even the Green family. So this time too, I intend to give up the inheritance cleanly and rearrange my household registration. Fiona thought of the maid's email who acted on the madam's orders. Because of that action, I knew what kind of person she really was. Thinking of this, Fiona continued, Madam, I won't take anything out of here, so you don't need to worry. Fiona sneered inwardly, thinking, but I also don't intend to let you have those precious stones. If possible, I want you to become greedier and greedier. Fiona's sneer startled the Countess, who thought she just laughed. How? Only then, when what you want is snatched right before your eyes, will you feel more painful and angry. Fiona smiled gently and said, I'm considering leaving everything behind and then leaving here. That day, I wrote a letter to Abin with very simple content. The allowance you mentioned earlier, I will accept it now. At this moment in Halen, snow had fallen, covering the entire forest white. Abin sat cross-legged on a chair reading the letter Fiona sent, arriving earlier than expected. Anyway, that girl does have a bit of a soft heart. Abin leaned back in his chair, looking at the letter, thinking silently, this is really what I've been waiting for lately. Still, Fiona is indeed a strange child. Since she was young, she has always been unusual, usually very sweet and gentle, but sometimes she becomes rigid and cold. Suddenly, a voice rang from outside the door, interrupting Abin's thoughts. Teacher, are you there? Abin replied, come in, you're late. Siren pushed the door open and entered, then replied, I heard you call, sir, I came right away. I wonder if you need anything. Abin placed the letter on the table and pushed it towards Siren as usual. I received Fiona's letter. Siren took the letter and looked at it. It's true that I only write about necessary things, Abin. Stop guessing, are you going to nag? Because there was nothing related to you in the letter. SAO, Siren said from the start, I didn't expect anything and that matter isn't important. You returned the letter to Abin and insisted because you planned to meet her. Abin then raised the letter and looked at it briefly. I don't really get along with the king right now. I know the truth about you. You're just an illegitimate child of the royal family. Ben crossed his arms over his chest and continued, a few years ago you said that. Siren recalled the old story. You replied yes. The teacher asked what would happen if you were recognized as an official prince. Ben also recalled, right, at that time you didn't answer. Siren replied respectfully, yes. He thought silently, because at that time he hesitated between revenge or living a peaceful life. Avon placed both hands on the table with a bit of meaning and continued, lately you often give opinions on my proposals. But Siren, if you want to return to the capital, you have to do something more worthy. Right now you're just an illegitimate child of the royal family. With nothing in hand but backed by the Hayland family, things would be different. If the capital's people open their arms to welcome you, then you need something to emphasize Prince Sigrin's existence. For example, the story of the prince who fought the demon beast leader in the barren Halen land and saved countless people. If you meet my requirements, I will prepare a stage for you if you want to reclaim the prince title and return to your homeland. Abin looked at Siren and smiled. Play the hero once, Siren. Although I'm very worried about how the story will develop in the future, Sigrun is still Sigrun. Fiona glanced at the letter she had received and thought, right now compared to that, finding the Green family's weakness is more important. Someone accused them of being involved in opium trafficking. Now, we need to verify if this information is accurate. The Green family makes a fortune from drug trafficking, and of course, in the Empire, everything related to drugs is illegal. If involved in that, all illegal assets will be confiscated, and finally all related parties, even family members, will be punished. However, Jen and the Countess seem still unaware of this. Thinking of this and looking at the letter again, Fiona suddenly felt confused, not knowing what to do next. What to do now? After a moment of thought, a smile appeared on Fiona's lips as she reached out and sparked a blazing flame. First, should I try to pressure them a bit? Fiona went to find her second older brother. At this moment, Jen was sitting on a chair reading a book. He looked up and saw Fiona coming, very surprised, and asked, Fiona, what are you doing here? Fiona smiled and replied, Brother, I want to talk to you about the heir. Hearing that, Jen raised his eyebrows and bluntly said, You have no right to interfere in this matter. Fiona spoke sincerely. Brother, I want you to inherit the position of the Green family patriarch. The family is of mages, and I think the best magician should be the leader. Fiona raised her hand to support her chin, looking troubled, and continued, however, Kendall is the heir because he is the eldest. Jen looked at Fiona as if to verify if what she said could be trusted. Actually, Jen was in trouble. According to Abin, Jen is a gambling debtor and owes quite a lot, so he plans to use the inheritance to pay off the debts. In fact, Abin had already bought that debt before leaving Hayland and gave me the right to handle this matter. But this is still a secret. Fiona crossed her arms and continued, Come on, brother, do you agree with me? Jen hesitated. With Fiona's support, he rubbed his forehead and said she was right. It's too narrow-minded just because he's the eldest to be the heir. But it's not just that. He has long planned to inherit this family. Fiona took out a small red bag tightly tied from her dress pocket and raised it to her brother. I just found this in the eldest brother's room. Do you know what it is? Jen opened the bag, looked, and was shocked. This is opium. Fiona covered her face with both hands, pretending to be distressed. Yesterday the servants found it in the eldest brother's room. Oh my God. The eldest brother, the family heir, is involved with drugs. Jen smiled. You've got important information, so everything will be back on track. Then Jen changed his attitude, frowned, and asked Fiona, but who found this in his room? Fiona hesitated for a moment, then laid down a condition and said to Jen, I can tell you everything, but before that I want to ask you for something. Jen asked what? Fiona clasped her hands and spoke earnestly, if you inherit the family, please remove my name from the household register. General, unbelievably. He looked up at Fiona in surprise and asked again, What? What benefit would you get from that? Fiona crossed her arms, bowed her head sadly, and explained the truth. I came home because of this matter. Everyone misunderstood that I came back to claim the inheritance, but that's not true at all. I only came back to see my relatives. But now I'm being pointed at for being an illegitimate child. I'm exhausted from being misunderstood by the whole family. Tears welled up in Fiona's eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she continued. And above all, my existence will only cause trouble for everyone. It's really sad. I love my family very much, but Fiona's unforgettable performance was successful. Winning Jen's sympathy, Jen covered his mouth with his hand, somewhat moved. Fiona, I understand now. When I take power, I will definitely free you, Fiona. Outwardly, she cried pitifully, but inside she was silently cursing. I understand you, monkey. At first, you even sent me to the battlefield, but the brotherly affection is strong. Passing by, Jen turned back to the previous question, then said, Now tell me the name of the servant. Finding drugs in the eldest brother's room? All right then. Fiona leaned close to Jen's ear and whispered, The servant accidentally finding the drugs is a lie. I bribed and had 6 guards watch the room. Those people will say they just happened to see it while cleaning. Then by chance, Miss Fiona found out, just as I predicted. Fiona raised the teacup to her lips and drank leisurely. Now I just have to watch. In some room of the house, the 2 Green brothers are arguing. Kim pointed at Jen and gritted his teeth. You're the one without any qualifications. Jen is no better. Still better than someone with no talent like you. Kendo snapped angrily. What? On this side. Fiona calmly sipped the tea's flavor, confirming her guess. It seems they are fighting. As predicted, day by day the battle grew fiercer. The Countess grew tired, and didn't want to set foot in the mansion anymore. Jen thought the rumors exaggerated Kendall's mistakes. Rumors are like a rolling snowball. Gradually, everyone doubted Kendall's qualifications. Fiona looked at the chocolates the servant just brought. In a good mood, even the chocolates looked delicious. In the end, he will be expelled. Jen released me and ended the family civil war. Then it was Fiona's turn to act. She put down the teacup and tried to stand, calculating. Meanwhile, I collected 10 incriminating documents accusing the Green family of illegal business and will send these to the Royal Treasury Department. It's like a game of Jenga. Pulling out the last piece completely destroys the tower. Fiona smiled in satisfaction. Today, Fiona received another letter from Abin. Holding the letter in her hand, she was a bit puzzled, thinking, Huh? I just received a letter last week. How come Abin sent another one so soon? The letter's content from Abin to Fiona. Fiona, you haven't finished your task yet. Abin's words made Fiona furious. She lay sprawled on the bed thinking, Does he think destroying a family is easy? Today, I sent an anonymous letter to the Royal Interior Ministry accusing the Green family of illegal business. If they verify the letter's truth, the Green family's assets will be confiscated. Anyway, the Green family's assets are considerable. This is a good opportunity for the Royal Treasury. 2 days later, blue sky, white clouds, golden sunshine. Fiona smiled brightly and went to congratulate General. Jen, congratulations. You've become the head of the family. Although everything went as hoped, Jen still seemed unsatisfied. He sighed. But this is only temporary. Fiona noticed Jen's thoughts. She smiled and flattered him. Anyway, if not you, then who else deserves to sit in that position? Praise like that. Jen puffed up proudly and rubbed his chin. Well, maybe that's true. While Jen was still complacent and careless, Fiona took out a file and handed it to General. Ah, yes. This is the document I mentioned before. If you stamp here, I will be removed from the household register. Jen didn't hesitate and stamped it. Then Jen hinted, Now go outside. I still have a lot of work to do. Fiona looked at the empty table in front of her, and had no intention of exposing anything. She said, "It seems so." "Ah, I have one last thing to say to you." Fiona put one hand on the table and held the letter covering her mouth with the other. She stepped closer to Jen and whispered, "I heard you're addicted to gambling and owe a lot of debt." After speaking, she smiled. Jen, being cornered, angrily shouted, "How did you find out about that?" Fiona had no intention to continue speaking. She quickly went to the door, leaned in, and smiled goodbye. "I ask for your permission to stay strong." Inside the room, Jen angrily slammed the table and shouted. Fiona finished handling everything. Fiona happily walked away, humming a tune. It was clear how good her mood was at this moment. She joyfully said, "How can I reduce this joyful mood?" Suddenly a shout rang out, "Fiona! You're still here? How come?" The Countess pointed toward the door, chasing Fiona away. "How shameless! Don't even think about draining my brother's resources. Get out of here immediately." Fiona was in a good mood, so she was too lazy to argue with her. She smiled softly and replied, "If you don't chase me away, I'll leave right now, Countess." "But before that, I just remembered one last thing I have to do," Fiona said. The Countess shouted even more fiercely. No matter how much Fiona tried to flatter her, it was useless. A sharp slap echoed as a hand struck the Countess's heavily made-up face. The Countess's earrings and hat fell to the ground from the force of the slap. The slap was so strong it made her collapse to the floor. The servants behind her panicked. "Oh my God! Madam Countess!" The Countess's eyes widened in rage, grinding her teeth. "How dare you! How dare you hit me!" Fiona rubbed her tingling hands from the strong slap, looked at the Countess lying on the ground and said, "Thinking it over, I still want to hit her once more." Kendall was expelled and became a pauper. Zen will be hunted for life because of debts, so, "Madam, you should let me hit you once to be fair, right?" The Countess panicked and shouted, "Jen, what nonsense are you talking about?" She strained her neck to yell. "Born of low bloodline, now even your mind is abnormal. Someone, lock this mad woman up." Suddenly a servant ran over in panic and shouted, Wait a moment, madam, something big has happened." The Countess, still furious, ignored the servant's words and loudly ordered, "Don't you see the situation right now? Quick, drag this madwoman away." Before the Countess could finish, another servant interrupted, "No, it's not like that. Right now, the royal soldiers have surrounded the mansion, ma'am. It's an order from the Emperor." Upon hearing this, the Countess's mouth dropped open in terror. The servant beside her covered his mouth in fear. Fiona, as if foreseeing everything, showed no surprise. She smiled and said, "Faster than I thought." Fiona touched the Countess's shoulder. She explained everything. "Do you know what's going on? Father and the eldest brother are involved in drug trafficking. That's why I reported it to the palace. But you also know, madam, if it's confirmed that these are assets from illegal businesses, everything will be confiscated and turned over to the National Treasury." Hearing this, the Countess's face turned pale. She stammered, "You don't lie. If that's the case, you won't escape punishment either." Fiona calmly presented a document. "Is that so? I am no longer a member of this family. No more rights, no more responsibilities." The Countess was stunned, frozen in place. She questioned, "Impossible. So now you're using resentment to repay our kindness?" Fiona replied realistically, "I was about to let it go because I wondered what level of responsibility I should have." Right. I don't like wasting feelings, Fiona thought. I hesitated about my own responsibility. If I could meet the old Fiona, I would want to apologize to her. But thinking back, I should have learned this lesson 5 years ago. So should you all. Saying that, she picked up the green gemstone earrings and handed them to the Countess, leaning close. Coldly, she reminded her, "From now on, keep these carefully." After handing the earrings to the Countess, Fiona returned to her gentle demeanor, smiling softly. "You won't see them a second time." The Countess couldn't help but take the earrings from Fiona. Fear drained the color from her face. Trembling all over, she sat there. At that moment, the royal army stormed in with a shout. "Count Green is here!" A soldier's voice rang out. Someone had reported that the Duke Green family was involved in illegal business. So, by imperial order, from now on, all the family's assets will be frozen. Fiona turned her back and walked away, humming the unfinished song from earlier. She thought the Internal Affairs Department worked really hard, then remembered that one of the characters had appeared. Working in the Internal Affairs Department is really nice. She stroked her chin. This is exactly the feeling. I'm not sure whether it was the thought of going to the Halen mansion or walking inside the Green mansion. At this moment, The two mother and child of the Green Count were screaming wildly. It was quite difficult. I just kicked my brother out and became the head of the family. Put that down. Ignoring the incident at the Green family in the Highland land on the pure white snow, a blood-stained sword was plunged down. Siren held his face sadly. Really, he was not the ruler of the monsters in the northern mountains, but was the most troublesome among the ones he had ever dealt with. Until now, Siren used the blood-stained sword to defend his body and then sat down on the white snow. He leaned back against a defeated giant dragon lying there. The battle with the giant dragon made Siren tired and exhausted, his face smeared. He sat there sighing, thinking he was tired to death. Then Aubin came over smiling. Siren, your contribution is very great. How do you feel about killing one of the monster leaders? Siren looked at the person who came and calmly replied, just normal. Siren thought if he wanted to return to the capital, then I must officially be recognized as a prince. To do that, the necessary thing is to achieve victories. Like this? I only kill them for that. Looking at his hands covered with wounds, he felt neither satisfied nor accomplished. But now I can go back. Siren clenched his fists, deciding to return to the homeland where those who killed my mother are. Moreover, Fiona is there. Thinking of Fiona whom he longs for day and night, a faint smile appeared on his lips. Siren spoke uncertainly. I don't know that girl. Said she doesn't really know others' hearts, and kept nagging about having to go sightseeing, wondering if Aben sneered arrogantly, speaking as if he knew everything in the palm of his hand. You don't have to worry about that, Aben. Turned away, leaving Siren's confused face sitting there. For my poor disciple, I have prepared the final weapon at the mansion already. After saying that, he waved his hand and left, not forgetting to wave goodbye to Siren. I'm going to check on the soldiers now. Siren looked confused, following Aben's retreating figure. What is it? Siren drew his sword from the white snow and thought, after all, how does Master keep Fiona here? She's like the wind. Siren stood up, admiring the dawn covering the Hayland land. He suddenly recalled Fiona's words before she left. Siren, I won't hurt you, and someday you will surely have a lot of things. She said those words and left. Fiona, until now, the one thing I always want is only one, but to get that, I need to have many other things. Siren looked back at the giant dragon's corpse lying there. The dragon's heart will bring me much fame. Wait for me, Fiona. Thinking that, he decisively thrust the sword straight into the giant dragon's corpse. The sound of the sword echoed, causing the birds perched nearby to scatter and fly away. Returning to Fiona, she wore a bright yellow lady's dress. And now she had arrived at the Highland mansion. Looking at the mansion before her, Fiona exclaimed in surprise, This is the Hayland mansion? Compared to the Hayland Demon King's castle, it was much more magnificent. Walking inside, Fiona couldn't help but be amazed. The outer walls and the training yard were all well maintained. The garden's flowers bloomed according to the season. From the outside, it seemed they were carefully tended to the point of wanting to praise the gardeners here. But in their eyes, I would look like supervisors standing high above looking down. Fiona felt like a subordinate of the terrifying Duke Aben. Surely she wouldn't be welcomed warmly. I don't intend to stay long in this uncomfortable place. Quickly finish everything and leave. I already told the gatekeeper about the work. Surely he has passed it on to the household staff. A cheerful servant stepped out to greet Fiona. Please come in, Miss Fiona. I am Celine, the manager of this mansion. I have heard the Duke speak a lot about you. The big gate opened wide. Celine extended her hand, inviting Miss Fiona to enter the mansion. Fiona saw a magnificent architectural structure. Magnificent and splendid. 2 long rows of maids lined up on both sides of the stairs, smiling and welcoming in unison. Fiona greeted, Welcome, miss, to the Highland Mansion. Miss Fiona, please come in. Fiona was very surprised and forced to smile. What is going on? Looking at the bright smiles of the maids, Fiona couldn't help but wonder. Usually, noble families don't welcome guests so grandly. The servant led Fiona to the most luxurious room in the mansion and said, Miss, you must be tired from the journey. I have already prepared the room for you. If you want anything, just tell me. After a while, the food was served on the table. Fiona admired the food in front of her. The food was perfectly to her taste. She sat down and happily enjoyed the delicacies. Fiona silently marveled in her heart. Everything is delicious, no doubt about it. Humans live to eat, Fiona said, holding a glass of wine and swirling it. At that moment, she was a bit surprised to see Celine smiling and standing there. She wondered and thought, but how does she know what I like to eat? Moreover, I came here for a purpose. Fiona spoke up. Celine, I came here to supervise this mansion under Aben's orders. Yes, Celine calmly and naturally replied. Of course, I have already prepared everything. After you finish eating, I will introduce you. After leading Fiona on a tour of the mansion, Celine stood before Fiona and said, I have introduced you to the main places of the mansion. Now, miss, you will check the mansion's income and expense records, right? Celine smiled and handed the ledger to Fiona. Fiona took it and politely thanked her. Looking at the book, Fiona was amazed and silently thought, so thick. Unexpectedly, Celine added, There's more. I will bring it right away. Fiona flipped through each page of the ledger. She was cautious, thinking the first thing was that their attitude was very friendly, but one cannot judge a person by their appearance alone. She had to examine carefully, but there was no sign of forged documents. She flipped back and forth, looking closely at every page, but found nothing. Fiona closed her eyes and thought the most likely issue was embezzlement. That was something that couldn't be overlooked. The income and expense records were very meticulous and detailed. Looking at the tall stack of ledgers piled crookedly on the table, Fiona sighed helplessly. Going through all this might take months. Could it be that Aubin hates looking at ledgers and gave them to me? On the Highland side, Aubin was talking to Sigrun. That kid will be tied up there for a while. This statement made Sigrun look puzzled. On the other side, Fiona's face was full of determination to fight. If that's the case, then let's get it done quickly. But inside, she was screaming, I thought so. But how did things turn out like this? Outside the villa was a row of cherry blossom trees, with petals fluttering in the wind beside green trees lining a bustling street filled with happy people chatting, and a few horse-drawn carriages clattering along. The petals fluttered in the wind. Inside one carriage was a young woman who couldn't hide her excitement and enthusiasm. Fiona exclaimed inwardly, Cherry blossoms! She looked at the busy and lively scene through the window, thinking there were too many people. It felt like she was watching people more than flowers. Duyen sat opposite her with a smiling face and said, Beautiful, isn't it? This is the Flower Festival, one of the capital's representative festivals. Fiona just smiled and replied, Ha, yes. Then she thought silently after looking at ledgers all day. Suddenly, being able to go see flowers like this was really nice. Going back in time, Duyen poured tea and suggested to her, Now is the best time to see the flowers. Fiona, with the stack of books in front of her, looked regretful. There's still a lot to do in the mansion. She gently put down the plate of cakes and expressed her wish. Sometimes people need to relax their minds, right? I always wanted to see the flowers with a young lady like you, miss. Then she slightly cleared her throat, raising her hand to wipe a tear that seemed barely noticeable at the corner of her eye. If you don't go now, you'll regret it later. Miss Fiona is so busy. When will you have the chance to go see the flowers? Jen sobbed. Fiona panicked, but had to accept. All right, I'll go with you to see the flowers. She thought silently. I can't refuse. But then she thought, taking this opportunity to go outside and get some fresh air wouldn't be bad. The blue lake was surrounded by a sturdy fence, with swaying tree branches outside, creating a very poetic scene. Fiona acknowledged the words he once said. Sharon said, This is a park reserved only for the aristocracy. It really is more relaxing than before, right? The corner of her mouth slightly lifted as she closed her eyes tightly, enjoying the scenery. Ducks swam by, making quacking sounds. Leaves fluttered down onto the calm lake, and the playful sounds of the young ladies nearby echoed. That's true. What? What are those laughter sounds that followed? Impossible. Fiona opened her eyes wide and looked around. The young ladies from earlier continued chatting. Next time, I'll bring it to try. Then the two parted ways. Each went in a different direction, leaving her there with a somewhat lonely back view. However, what she thought now was that it was truly peaceful. She crossed her arms and placed them on the railing for support, slightly bowing her head with her eyes tightly shut. Fiona recalled the past amid the whistling wind, the cold snow, and swords being plunged down. Horses without hesitation, this place was completely opposite to Halong. She slightly opened her eyes and continued her thoughts. Occasionally, she felt empty, and thought about the mystical things of this world. She imagined puppets, being controlled by invisible strings. This was the world she created, with characters existing within it. Everything happening was prearranged. The master, who was also controlling those puppets, was Fiona herself. Her expression carried an indescribable sadness. At this moment, an image of a computer screen appeared in her mind. It was still lit. However, if one didn't know the characters beforehand, this wouldn't entirely be a world from a book. She had established this basic worldview, creating the male lead, female lead, and all the events happening around other characters as well. Thinking of this, Fiona spread out her hand and muttered while counting 1, 2. The number of characters she was impressed by was about 10. Then she turned her back and walked away, suddenly shocked when she realized, wait, in this vast world, there are only 10 people? That's much fewer than I thought. Lost in thought, she suddenly bumped into a chest. Ah! She cried out. Fiona startled and stepped back, raising her hand to cover her head, looking at the man with red hair in front of her, blaming herself for being lost in thought and bumping into him. Normally, I would never make such mistakes. The man, with a tall and imposing appearance, stretched out both hands as if to keep distance and spoke. Miss, are you okay? Her vision gradually cleared, revealing his face and slightly reddish-brown hair. His angular, handsome face reached out to her with concern, asking, Are you all right? Before gently touching her forehead. He spoke, Are you okay? No? I'm sorry. Then she silently evaluated the man in front of her. This man was about 20 years old, dressed neatly and elegantly, and behaved very politely. The man with the captivating smile was still intently looking at her. She continued thinking that just by looking she could tell he had a noble status. Then Fiona seemed to realize something and opened her mouth in surprise. This man had red hair and yellow eyes. His eyes, nose, and mouth were all sharp. He continued smiling. And those clues made her silently admire such a special appearance. Such a look only existed in the world of novels. Recalling the angular, masculine face of the male lead Siren, she could only say he was handsome. The second male lead, Abin, with a serious and mature demeanor and silver hair, was also handsome. These characters seemed to have a sparkling halo around them. She could affirm that a special appearance was a main character trait. This formula was applied in every novel. Based on these factors so far, she was sure that a bright-faced person like this was definitely one of the main characters. Suddenly, she froze and lost 5 seconds. But who exactly was this person? She didn't know that. The man standing before her was none other than Duke Aaron Clovis. Yes, he continued to ask if she was okay. Fiona deliberately avoided his gaze and looked away. Slightly awkward, she replied, Yes, I'm fine. I should be the one apologizing. Then their eyes both looked in the same direction at something sparkling on the ground. She uttered a questioning, ah. Upon seeing it clearly, it was an item with a black gem as the centerpiece lying there. She continued, This brooch seems to be mine, so it must have fallen. Then Fiona slightly turned and bent down to pick up the brooch. The moment she touched the brooch, a power radiated a red light that affected her hand. A squeezing sound rang out. She was shocked and startled by the incident, slightly stepping back in surprise and confusion. Why is it that Aaron bent down to pick up his hairpin without any effort at all? As if it didn't matter, he said she didn't need to pay attention, holding the hairpin in his hand while sitting next to that girl. In a low voice, he explained that this was not just an ordinary gem, but a magic stone. She was a bit surprised. She thought to herself that magic stones were items that supported ordinary people or mages with unstable magic, and they were set to react to other mages' magic stones like small crystal fragments, a special item in this world. Fiona thought she was skilled in magic use, so she had never used a magic stone before. Aaron looked at her with slightly sharp eyes, made a sound, then spoke. Watching her reaction, he finally saw. Miss, you are a mage, right? She was startled, her eyes filled with tension and confusion. It was embarrassing to be called a mage in such a peaceful atmosphere. The two continued their conversation. He replied, You're too modest. Just a light touch like that, and if so, this is not an ordinary ability. The light from the magic stone he held suddenly sparkled, as if to illustrate his words. Moreover, the bright red light made her sweat profusely. She swallowed hard and muttered to herself, Now that I remember, the more brilliant the stone's light changes, the stronger the mage's power is. He quietly put the hairpin into his jacket pocket. Then he continued with his usual gentle smile, You really have outstanding abilities. Without letting him say more, Fiona lifted her skirt, stood up, and turned away, ending the conversation. Yes, thank you, I'll be going now. But Aaron spoke again. Wait a moment, then introduced himself. My name is Aaron Clovis. Fiona stiffened. A loud bang echoed in her mind. Her face was full of shock. She thought she remembered who he was. The man behind her still smirked, but now with a hint of mystery. He said, Please forgive me, but may I ask your name, miss? She turned around and forced a smile, thinking she already knew who he was. So she couldn't reveal her real name and made up one to answer. I'm Sharon, Aaron responded. It's an honor to meet you, Miss Sharon. I hope we can meet again. She slightly bowed forward, one hand placed over her chest. The other lifted her skirt politely, replying, "Yes, likewise. It's a great honor to meet Marquis Clovis." After finishing, she quickly turned and left, leaving the man staring intently at her. With a pounding heart, "I'll be going now." Her steps quickened. As if wanting to quickly distance herself from him, she thought to herself she had forgotten that damn name Crazy. Just Crazy. Overwhelmed with ledgers, she had forgotten he was a remarkable figure in the finance department. In her mind, she pictured him smirking, dressed in expensive clothes. Proud and arrogant, Aaron Clovis was known as a wicked and scheming man. As the male antagonist, he naturally acted friendly and polite in front of the female lead, Eunice. That arrogant man was even willing to kneel, smiling happily for a woman. Her thoughts returned, but these things didn't matter. Fiona, the body's owner she had possessed, was also Fiona, but the original in this world full of pain, cherishing a magic stone, tears falling. She lay in a pool of blood, uttering a name, Aaron. Aaron was the key factor that made Fiona the final boss in the novel. In a scene as red as fresh blood, Fiona's face was terrified as she fell backward. A huge power burst from her chest, shards of gems flying everywhere. The reason Fiona became the final boss was because she couldn't control the dark power, even though she had many reasons to use it. The image of Aaron and Fiona appeared in a large mirror, shown only in black and white, looking very mysterious. But the decisive factor was Aaron, and the body she possessed was Fiona's. Fiona's face twisted like a monkey's butt, eyebrows furrowed, teeth clenched, both hands pressed to her chest to calm herself. Fiona tried to stay calm while thinking. Honestly, the reason she forgot Aaron was simple. Until now, she had only focused on Siren. Thinking quietly in her mind, the image of Sigrun blushed shyly, smiling brightly at Fiona, calling his name sweetly like Sugar Sigrun. Arn appeared in the latter half of the principal, but Fiona didn't expect him to show up where she was. Before the principal began, Fiona sat in the carriage, one hand resting on the window frame. Fiona's face was sweaty, panting heavily like a cow. She gazed outside. Watching the bustling crowd hurriedly passing by, she silently cursed. This capital has so many people, but why do I have to meet him? Arn was like a fated curse, even by probability. The chance of meeting him was very low, but it was maddening. Fiona secretly cursed how unlucky she was. Aaron Clovis was a schemer and extremely evil. In front of others, he always looked down on them, but in front of the woman he loved, he always showed affection. He always wore a fake smile like an angel, making anyone fall for him. From the heroine's perspective, he was quite an interesting and affectionate character, but from Fiona's point of view, she already hated him, and now they had to run into each other again. Remembering his gentle, smiling face, Fiona shivered with goosebumps, sweat trickling down. She thought to herself, the most troublesome character to run away from is him, not me. Sitting in the carriage, she looked exhausted like a dried corpse. Her face darkened, eyes rolling back, silently cursing. Unlike his appearance, Arn's personality was extremely filthy. Seeing Fiona's dazed and confused state, the servant accompanying her was puzzled but dared not ask anything, too tired from thinking. Fiona propped her hand up, bored, her face 30% helpless, 70% like a cow, mouth wide open, sighing. Her face was still gloomy, as if wanting to kill someone. Sweat trickling down, thinking, I don't know anymore. If things got messed up, she might have to assassinate Aaron first. Under the clear blue sky, white clouds floated gently. Fiona sat in the carriage, continuing her terrible thoughts. If she killed all the characters who could become the final boss, she could live as a kind Fiona. Just after thinking that, she laughed out loud. Ha ha, very refreshing, making the servant accompanying her scared, almost wetting himself, thinking she was possessed. He reluctantly spoke in a puzzled tone. Miss Fiona, in the empty garden, there is one person. The voice of Duke Aaron Clovis echoed, he said. Running away so fast, Aaron looked at the empty garden. With a face as if pondering something, recalling Fiona's figure running away, Aaron reasoned in his mind. At most, she's a minor. It seems she recognized me even though I haven't revealed my identity. But it wouldn't be strange to know who I am, since I'm quite famous in the upper class of the capital. Suddenly, his train of thought was interrupted. Aaron didn't notice that behind him, a girl had passed by. Recognizing him, she stopped. Without caring about the girl behind him, Aaron continued to be silent, his eyes drooping, thinking further. It's just a reaction, he thought while recalling Fiona's face darkening, her face drained of blood, terrified when she saw him behind. By now, Aaron didn't know how many girls, probably in the hundreds, each standing behind him, shouting until their faces turned red, looking like fangirls meeting their idol. But Aaron seemed uninterested in beauties, still closing his eyes, calculating his own matters. Until now, this was the first time a girl looked at him with such an expression. Recalling when Fiona's foot lightly touched the magic stone glowing red, Aaron silently admired. She only needed to touch it lightly, and the magic stone changed like that. Clearly, she is a high-level mage. But, strangely, with that skill, she should be very famous in the upper class. Fiona's face suddenly swelled with a lump on her forehead. Looking at Aaron, it was clearly the first time Aaron had met that face. After finishing that thought, suddenly Aaron showed a sinister face, cunning, sharp eyes, and a smirk, looking very scoundrel-like. He thought to himself, her name is Saren, right? If she's such a powerful mage, she will be very useful for my future plans. Just after thinking that, Aaron didn't linger on the beauties behind him. He immediately sprinted away despite the clinging of the girl's craving men. In his mind, he was determined to find her. The huge castle looked very romantic amidst the fluttering flower petals. But contrasting the peaceful scene was the sight of books and documents piled as high as Mount Tai. Along with Fiona's sighing voice, she exclaimed a few words. Really, then scrunched her face like a jujube apple. Both hands helplessly held his head, shouting loudly with no end, while Fiona sat beside him and the book tower was even taller than her. In Fiona's mind appeared the image of Duke Aben Halo's face, grinning mischievously. Fiona cried with tears streaming down her cheeks. In her heart, she thought silently that, indeed, Aben didn't want to do this. So, he sent her here. She really wanted to meet him and confront him, but outside the window, the leaves rustled, and inside the room, Fiona was still lost in thought. But in just a little while, both Aben and Siren would arrive at the capital. Because Siren's first appearance before the nobles was at the flower festival, Fiona leaned back against the wall. Her face remained blank. She was dazed and muttered under her breath that there was about a month left. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door outside. Fiona immediately sat up straight. Her face brightened, and she smiled gently as she spoke softly. "Please come in, mansion manager," she said with a gentle smile. Seeing her, Fiona exclaimed, "Ah, Siren." She smiled and asked, "Miss, do you have time now?" The mansion manager stepped into the room and approached Fiona. Hearing her question, Fiona was secretly glad, thinking it was good to have a little rest. While thinking this, Fiona replied, "What's the matter?" Suddenly, for some unknown reason, Celine smiled brightly like a flower but said nothing, as if her mouth was sealed. This made Fiona confused and dazed. Then, under the scene of fluttering flower petals, in a dress shop, a pile of beautiful sparkling dresses and luxurious jeweled accessories were beautifully displayed. It was obvious none of them were cheap. At that time, Fiona was being fitted with dresses by the tailors, her face showing confusion and sweating profusely. She asked the mansion manager, "Celine, this isn't an ordinary dress, right?" Celine covered her mouth and laughed. "Ho-ho! It's prepared for the ball." Fiona lowered her voice, thinking she already had many dresses. But they told her to buy more, so there must be something. She sighed deeply and added, "Also, this is Marion's costume shop, and as its name suggests, this is a place admired by the nobles in the capital. Is there such a place in the novel? A shop that drives every girl crazy. Take my money and go far away, magnificent flowers. This is a place all nobles desire." The shop explained that it takes several months to complete a dress, but with the main character's aura, the heroine is an exception. She can try on costumes as often as meals. Even NPCs were stunned when they heard this news. "It's not fair at all," said a wealthy person. "The heroine, Eunice, also often wore dresses from this costume shop." Fiona suddenly thought of the scene where the male lead kissed the heroine's hair. So romantic. She remembered a scene where Aben seduced her like that. Fiona gently stroked her hair. She didn't expect to be able to try on costumes from this shop so easily. Should she be touched by the wealth of the Hayland family? She closed her eyes and asked herself. But the situation was progressing strangely. She felt something was still a bit unsettled inside. Celine stood aside, wiping tears with a handkerchief. "Ah, Miss Fiona, seeing you like this reminds me of my granddaughter. It's really difficult to work with my granddaughter now." This sentence made Fiona even more downhearted. She couldn't smile, even though it was strange. After a while of measuring and sewing, the pretty dress was completed. Celine looked at the dress, then at Fiona. "Miss, I still have a few things to discuss. With the shop staff, can you go wait at the cafe across the street?" Fiona happily replied, "Yes, I understand." At the cafe across the street, Fiona held a glass of cold water and drank it deliciously. She leaned back comfortably. Ah, so refreshing. I didn't expect to be able to drink something this cold. I really can't stand the weather in Highland. Even so, there were times she had to hold a hot cup of coffee, wrapped up tightly, sitting by the fireplace grumbling, "Why is it always so cold every day?" Looking at the clear blue sky, Fiona couldn't help but exclaim how beautiful the weather was, and that she finally got to drink cold water. She stretched her arms. Hey, it really lifts my mood. It's so good to be outside. At that moment, a hand reached toward her table. Ouch! Hearing the noise, Fiona turned her head and saw a smiling young man. We meet again. Fiona was startled when she saw the red-haired guy in front of her. The voice was Aaron Clovis. Aaron smiled brightly. It's a pleasure, dear Celine. Suddenly and unexpectedly. Before Fiona's stunned and shocked reaction, Duke Aaron placed his hands on the table where she was sitting, his face breaking into a bright smile like sunlight. He said to her, Nice to meet you, Miss Sally. Fiona naturally, when not approached by someone she hated, immediately shifted to a state of hatred. Scrunching her face, eyes wide, mouth open in shock, both hands still resting on the chair's armrest, he appeared, and Fiona swallowed hard, her face darkening as if she had seen a ghost. In her mind, she silently wondered why Aaron was here. Seeing Fiona's expression, Aaron smiled mischievously. He put on a half-lidded look, staring at Fiona. Regaining her composure, Fiona, disgusted, turned her head away. She refused to look at Aaron and said, Don't call me miss, I am not nobility. Aaron stood in front, arms crossed calmly, still wearing a gentle smile. His eyes were tightly shut, looking completely harmless. After thinking for a moment, he said, Not nobility. But miss, how can you use Marianne's fitting room? Upon hearing his question, Fiona suddenly froze and stopped. About 2 seconds later, she startled, turned back, frowned, and asked Aaron irritably, How do you know I went to Marianne's fitting room? Contrary to Fiona's anger and annoyance, Aaron still calmly raised his hand and bowed politely, replying, I saw Miss come out from there earlier. If it's a matter of etiquette, then please forgive me. Seeing his attitude, Fiona hesitated before responding, No, it's just that I have acquaintances, so I was able to enter the fitting room. Then Aaron raised his hand to his chest, smiling gently and charmingly, saying, Then I will call you Sally. It was unclear whether he was truly innocent or pretending not to notice Fiona's hatred and discomfort. Aaron shamelessly asked again, May I sit with you? After hearing his question, Fiona stiffened, her face showing hesitation, trying to appear fine, but inside her tears were like a vast ocean. In her heart, Fiona screamed and thought she wanted to tell him to leave, but since she wasn't nobility, she couldn't kick out a marquis. So, reluctantly, Fiona answered, Yes. Then Aaron pulled out a chair with a clatter, and nonchalantly sat down, much to Fiona's irritation, whose skin was as tough as a horse's gut. As soon as Aaron sat down, Fiona immediately looked at him seriously and asked, So, do you have something to say to me? No beating around the bush like in Haiphong, Aaron replied. Sally, if you are not an official mage in the capital, then I want to make you an offer. As he spoke, Aaron put on a face as if guarding a national secret, making people curious to death. He smiled slyly, his eyes like a fox tempting a lamb. Hearing his rambling, Fiona wasn't very surprised by Aaron's words, but became cautious. Fiona froze for a few seconds, mumbling as if something was stuck in her throat, but in her mind, she thought, Sure enough, Aaron cares about my magical ability. This was exactly like the original storyline. Then, 30% brave and 70% scared. Fiona closed her eyes and quickly refused. She thanked him and said, But I have no intention of becoming a mage. I don't need it, dear. However, Aaron didn't give up. He stubbornly smiled and said, Whatever conditions you want to offer, I agree. I'm fine, so just say it. How much money do you want? Aaron acted as if Fiona was very poor or something, asking such a silly question. Suddenly, a cloak fluttered lightly by, billowing softly. The power was so great that passers-by were stunned, mouths agape. Fiona's voice then rang out, answering Aaron, No, I don't need money. The majestic figure of Duke Abenhallow from the north strode past, causing everyone nearby to whisper and gossip. Aaron still hadn't noticed the unusual atmosphere around him. He said, Aha! Then it's honor. Then Aaron showed a sly, annoying face, clapping his hands together in front of him, looking dangerous, mumbling like an 80-year-old man. If you come with me, I promise to give you honor. Aben's voice sounded behind Aaron. What you want will never happen. Hearing that voice, Aaron turned around to look. Fiona, sitting in front, was shocked with wide eyes and open mouth. Count Aben continued, "It seems you still don't know who that kid is." Marquis Clovis. Fiona was still stunned, her hand pointing at Duke Aben. Face still surprised with eyes wide open and mouth agape. Aaron stammered without saying a proper word, just repeatedly saying, "Ah." And, suddenly, the corner of Aben's mouth slightly curled up at Aaron's utterly shocked and frozen expression. Fiona shouted loudly, "Duke Aben!" But Aaron quickly returned to his calm gentleman mode. He put his hand on his chin, squinted his eyes slightly, and said, "So it's Duke Aben. Hello. I didn't know you came to the capital," seeing Aaron's annoyed face. Aben sneered lightly with a disdainful, then pretended to ask, "Is that Viscount Aaron Clovis?" Suddenly the atmosphere between the two handsome men crackled as if a Bluetooth lightning bolt struck between them. Although both smiled at each other, Fiona felt the awkwardness and was startled to the point her face drained of all color. Her limbs flailed wildly as she silently screamed inside, "No, no, don't put me in the middle." Then to break the awkward and uncomfortable atmosphere, Fiona seriously grabbed his sleeve tightly. Aben was flustered and quickly asked, "Viscount, is there something going on here?" Seeing her call out, Aben casually glanced at Fiona, then smiled brightly. "I came to show you the dragon I caught." "You've never seen a dragon before, right?" Hearing Aben talk about catching a dragon as casually as carrying a tray, Fiona was shocked, sweating profusely. Her mind screamed wildly. What is he talking about? It's like he just bought fried chicken and brought it here. The world at that moment seemed to shrink to just Aben and Fiona. No one else cared about Aaron's presence, who sat there dumbfounded, glancing at Aben. Fiona asked Aben, "You already caught it? Didn't you have to go catch it? How did you catch it?" Aben casually replied to Fiona's question. "Siren caught it. That guy was so hasty, I thought he'd die." While speaking nonsense, suddenly Duke Aben stopped mid-sentence and gently placed his hand on Fiona's shoulder, which surprised her. She secretly glanced at Aben. He spoke, but only said one word. Aben threw his arm around Fiona's shoulders, standing tall like a protective husband behind her, still smiling professionally, and said to Aaron, "I don't know if Viscount has something to say to this kid." Seeing Aben's strange attitude, Aaron paused for about 2 seconds, then smiled like a friendly beauty queen and replied briefly, "I'm talking about something very important with Miss Sally." As soon as he finished speaking, Aben looked confused and glanced at Fiona, thinking, Sally? How come the two understood each other's meaning without speaking? Just by a glance. Truly a perfect pair. Fiona immediately understood Aben's meaning. She glanced back and silently thought, "Sir, please just let it go." Then suddenly around Aben, for some unknown reason, a bunch of lightning appeared, crackling. But Aben still pretended to be polite, smiling friendly, and said to Aaron, "I see. But that story will have to be postponed until next time." Even around Aben, lightning crackled fiercely, terrifyingly, but his face still wore a smile as he replied, "Though it's unfortunate, that seems a bit difficult because I still have something to say to Miss Sally." After hearing him speak, Aben was annoyed, but still tried to smile and zipped his lips for a moment to regain composure. Fiona sitting beside him was shocked, eyes rolled back like a zombie, mouth agape, raising her hand to cover her mouth. Inside, she screamed, "Ah, that sentence means, please leave. How dare you say that to Aben?" Then she didn't care about Aben's annoyed and angry face staring intently. Arn suddenly spoke, breaking the silence. "Excuse me, but may I ask, what is the relationship between Miss Sally and the Duke?" At that moment, Fiona thought silently. "And this question means, if it's none of your business, then leave." Hearing Arn's words, she worriedly frowned like a jujube apple, sweat trickling down, screaming inside repeatedly, "What now? Duke? If it's a superior-subordinate relationship, then the Duke will be pushed away." Suddenly, Aben was silent, thinking for several seconds, then raised his hand and said to the talkative Aaron, "Viscount Clovis, this kid is really..." Then Aben grabbed Fiona's shoulders tightly, his face still wearing a triumphant smile, and continued, "My daughter." Fiona couldn't react immediately, just sat there stunned like a well-behaved puppy. Only after a while did she understand the situation. Fiona was too stunned to react, sitting still like a well-behaved puppy, only understanding the situation after a while. Fiona's face fell, startled and unable to believe her ears, sweat pouring down at that moment. Eyes wide, mouth agape, silently screaming inside. What is he saying? Aben was lying then but kept a straight face. Without blinking, Aaron raised his hand to cover his mouth and asked Aben, "The Duke has a daughter?" "How?" When asked, Aben remained calm and replied, "She is my adopted daughter. I just recently adopted her." Aaron still refused to back down. His mouth kept opening and babbling nonsense. It seemed like it was the first time Sally heard about this. Aben was no less stubborn than Aaron. He raised his hand to stroke Fiona's head and then laughed, saying the girl had just found out too. At this moment, Fiona was about to be shocked to smoke, her mouth still agape, her mind silently thinking not to force it too much. Then Aben's voice rang out again. He said so. "I hope you hurry so that my child and I can have some warm time together." Marquis Clovis and Aaron were now being chased away, unable to argue back, eyes tightly shut, still clasping his hands together. Deep in thought for a moment, then gave up and stood up, saying, "Okay." Meanwhile, Aben's hand was still resting on Fiona's head. Aaron stood up and the chair creaked. He calmly replied, "Then I withdraw." But just as he stood up, Aaron turned back with a sneer and said, "But Marquis Halo." Then he fully turned to look at Aben and asked, "What was the real reason you came back here?" Hearing Aaron ask like that, suddenly Aben smiled mysteriously and answered, "I came after winter ended. The street scene was bustling and noisy." Fiona still held the same emotion from before. She turned and shouted loudly, "Yes!" Walking back, "How come? I didn't ask for leave but resigned." Fiona and Aben strode down the street. Aben heard Fiona argue and closed his eyes in frustration, replying just the same. Hearing Aben's nonsense, Fiona frowned and stared at him, then asked back, "How can it be just the same?" Then Aben didn't care about Fiona's irritation and launched into a long speech like rapid fire. More importantly, next time if some flies or gnats bother you, just ignore them. If Siren were here, it would be very interesting. Before Aben could finish, Fiona's face was dumbfounded like a pile of dung, confused about the mention of flies and gnats. Then she quickly realized a mix of helplessness and frustration. Fiona turned to look at Aben and asked, "Are you talking about Marquis Clovis?" Suddenly from somewhere came a sharp scream of AI. A man shouted in fear, "What exactly is that?" His scream attracted the attention of Fiona and Aben. Both turned to see what was happening. A series of sharp screams echoed, calling out ghosts and non-stop cries of "ah." Suddenly, Fiona stepped forward while AI quickly ran away. Everyone shouted, "Run!" Suddenly, Fiona stood still while the crowd scattered. Fiona's face was still serious. Her two hands created a strong magical aura. Fiona shouted loudly, "Everyone hide in a safe place." In her mind, she was thinking she must protect everyone. Suddenly, Aben stepped up from behind, placing his hand on her shoulder and said, "Don't understand why he said that." Fiona hadn't finished and asked in a daze, "Duke?" Then she shouted, "Those are ghosts and we don't have time." The Duke's voice rang out again. Aben said, "No, it's not what you think." Then a boy ran out from somewhere with a bright smile and loudly said, "Everyone don't run." Fiona was still hesitant and didn't understand what was happening when the boy's voice rang out again. "Don't run, stay and watch it." In the noisy, crowded crowd was a huge dragon head. No one understood why it was placed prominently in the middle of the street, attracting so many passers-by's gazes. Then Aben spoke, "Come on, Fiona." Then he raised his hand pointing forward and told Fiona to look. Fiona obediently looked in the direction of Aben's hand. At that moment, a bunch of carriages passed by. One extremely magnificent and luxurious. One carried the huge dragon head. It attracted countless onlookers. The townspeople crowded both sides of the road. Aben watched the passing carriages, smiled, crossed his arms and said to Fiona, who was still stunned with mouth agape and eyes wide, "Those aren't ghosts coming to bully people." Siren looked cool riding a horse. Fiona's handsome face was like a top star Harry Lou, wearing armor and riding a horse. Truly a stunning beauty, accompanied by Aben's voice saying, "That was the kid who came to chase after you. See, Siren." Fiona was dazed like seeing a handsome guy for the first time, staring without looking away, blushing red, thinking silently, Siren and I have been inseparable since childhood. This is the first time we've been apart for many days. This is Fiona's heartfelt feeling when she saw Siren at the parade ceremony looking a bit different. And her inner thoughts just arose, maybe. That's why now, seeing him again, feeling like he has grown taller and more majestic, at this moment, Siren must be said to be extremely handsome. He attracted everyone's gaze. She was still lost in thought and felt more mature than when they parted. At this moment, a voice broke her thoughts. Oh my god, how did they catch that thing? She followed the direction of the man's hand as he exclaimed and pointed there. She saw a huge dragon head about the size of a room. Its eyes were completely white. The crowd buzzed with chatter. First time seeing such a big monster, that was the young man riding the horse in front who killed the Duke. At this moment, he also raised his hand toward the monster, acting like he wanted to introduce it to Fiona. That is exactly what I want to show you, she asked shyly. Really, sir? You actually caught a dragon to show me? He casually replied. Of course. Even though it's a duke, I haven't seen a dragon yet, so enjoy looking at it. He looked at her like a child and said, and she was helpless, speechless, silently thinking, please don't say that sentence in a tone like I'm ordering pizza. Do you want some or not? But she couldn't help but say, to kill that thing, Siren must have worked hard. Even though it's a duke, thanks to this, Siren had left a deep impression in the eyes of the capital's people. She looked at the excited, mixed with astonished faces of the people, then looked at Siren riding the horse majestically moving forward. She continued to sink into thought. This is a good performance for Siren, who needs to quickly secure a position, the sooner the better. Stopping for a moment, she told herself there was only one problem, that she didn't remember writing this scene. There is something called the butterfly effect. If unpredictable situations keep happening like this, then if those butterflies flap their wings and create a storm, what should I do? The story I know might completely change into a story I don't know. Every detail in the story appeared in her imagination. Then the image gradually darkened, making her feel scared. At this moment, a voice broke her out of her thoughts. Miss Fiona. She suddenly looked toward the direction the sound came from. There were 2 soldiers in the parade troop. To her, continuously waving, their faces full of joy, repeatedly calling Miss Fiona. The 2 soldiers were really excited, both competing to speak. Are you well? I have really wanted to meet you. The other soldier also happily joined in. It was said this one even cried because of the lady. At this time, passers-by watching the parade heard Fiona's people whispering and chatting. What are they talking about? Seems like they know each other, hearing that she was embarrassed to death. Meanwhile, the 2 soldiers still kept saying the lady is famous, and she at this moment called out to Duke Aben, I'm going ahead. Aben asked, why not go back with the parade troop? She immediately said she would walk, muttering how embarrassing. Scene changes. Now it was evening. A young man was walking while speaking in an annoyed tone. What parade and what impression? So it was Siren after a whole day of parading in the capital, arranged by Duke Aben. He was temporarily staying at the Duke's house, feeling tired and annoyed, muttering if it weren't for being caught by that annoying teacher, I wouldn't have done this. He thought silently. He could tell the man was very pleased to see the expression he hated. Instead of doing this, I want to do something else. For example, quickly be with Fiona. While thinking, a gentle call reached his ear. He froze and looked toward Fiona. She just spoke. He was still sweating from the whole day's fatigue, but seemed to have no more annoyance. The atmosphere was also sweet with her presence. She smiled gently, and he looked at her suddenly. A bit shy. She was still gentle like the bright moonlight. Long time no see. You'll stay here for now, right? I was very worried because I didn't see you at dinner. He replied yes, because it had been a while since they met. He couldn't hide his feelings. His face still slightly flushed, thinking to himself, this really is Fiona, not a dream. A small, delicate hand suddenly raised, gently touching his face to wipe the sweat with concern. She asked, did you get wet outside? Was it raining? In his mind at this moment there was only one thought. He wanted to hold her tightly. He wondered if she knew that. Meeting me again. How much effort I have put in. Now going inside, Fiona handed him a towel and said, take this, Siren. Anyway, it's spring. Staying wet for too long can easily cause a cold. You have to dry off thoroughly, she kept reminding him like a child. With a gentle tone, he just scratched his head and took the towel she gave him, lifting the towel. His hair was wet carelessly, making her speechless. She took the towel from his hand. Really? Then she pulled him into a chair, saying, sit down. He was a bit embarrassed and replied, it's fine. It will dry like this. Ignoring what he said, she slowly wiped him carefully and told him to stay still. I know if I let you do it yourself, you would do it carelessly. Facing her natural action, he had no choice but to sit still. His face quietly blushed. He couldn't see her face at this moment, only could hear her voice. I really can't leave you alone. I want to follow you every day. Her hand accidentally touched his neck, making him shudder. Feeling a bit strange, his face blushed more, thinking, Is she doing this on purpose? While Siren's emotions were uncontrollable, Fiona, on this side, was completely unaware, thinking about something else, recalling that before she left, Siren didn't bother talking to her, and seeing him silent again, she thought, is he still mad? Then suddenly remembered something. Feeling a bit awkward, she said to herself, besides being angry, there's also that thing. In her mind appeared the scene before she left. Siren hugged her tightly from behind. Yet he didn't say a word. She found it very strange then. Now recalling it, she thought to herself, feeling awkward, let's just pretend nothing happened. Then she changed the subject and asked, hey Siren, was catching the dragon hard? He replied, no. She mechanically answered, good, thinking inside. So I know later he will have to fight an even stronger dragon, if the story goes as I wrote. Ignoring that, she then said, now you can stand up. But before she finished, Siren stood up suddenly. She only managed to utter a few words. Wait a moment. But seeing him now standing, he was a whole head taller than her, and even more than that, she sighed. Ah, so miraculous and also proud. The little child back then has now grown tall, and even killed a dragon, no doubt to say. At this time, Fiona still saw Sigrun as the boy she saved that year, just that a few years later he grew so tall. She put herself as an adult watching her child grow up. But looking at him, she didn't think she was the same age as him now. But in Siren's eyes at this moment, her expression made him unable to understand what it meant, so she continued, Siren, although it's a bit late, she raised both hands and gently hugged him. You really have worked hard. Well done. Hugging him like that. Then she quickly let go and said, heh, you must be tired, so I'll go now. Without giving her a chance to finish, his big hands wrapped around her waist and gently pulled her in, making her surprised and unable to react. Siren, if you do that, I can't leave, she said, and her whole body was tightly hugged by his large frame. The space fell silent. Only the sound of both hearts pounding remained. The room had only two people, Siren and Fiona. He had been holding her tightly since they met, wanting to hug her tightly like now. Only he knew how much he had to restrain himself. But with that hug from her, he couldn't hold back and embraced her. Both remained silent for a moment. Then she spoke. Hey, Siren. Seeing he didn't respond, she whispered, did you think I would just stand still? Just as she was about to act, Siren tightened his hold and even buried his face into her shoulder. She thought to herself, then hugged him tighter, and only then did he speak. Fiona, what do you plan to do later? She replied. Probably have to finish the assignments the Duke gave first. He asked, the matters in this mansion? Yes, she answered. He continued. Anyway, you always look so fragile. They talked, but she was still in his arms. He recalled when they were young. Since the first time he met her, she had always been like that. Gentle, kind, without any thought of staying in one place or giving all her affection to that place. He said, anyway, if you want to leave, Aben will completely let you go. She said, if I do that, the Duke will chase me to the 6th district. If so, even I cannot deny that I am a bit weak-hearted. He mentally responded to her with a yes, because that is his personality, and I always slip through the cracks, so I could be by your side until now. He then asked, after finishing work at the mansion, what do you plan to do? She answered, I will buy a house somewhere. She happily replied, I used to plan to live in the countryside, but it seems living there is more inconvenient than I thought, so I plan to buy a house in a quieter suburban area. Fiona, he gently led her away from himself. I have something to tell you. She looked at him, a bit flustered, thinking, what's wrong with him today? Out loud, she asked, what is it you want to talk about? He said, do you still remember what you said before? She was a bit unsure how to answer and asked back, what did I say before? Thinking to herself, what did I say? He replied that if I ever need help, you will come to me any time. She suddenly remembered he did say that. Oh, right, he continued. I think now is that time. She looked at him full of doubt. Why do you think so? Lung added. Isn't your life already bright now? Oh, he tried to find words to explain. You really don't know, so you asked, right? In her mind, Sigrun also recalled 2 years ago when I told Fiona about my origin, that actually I carry royal blood. And because of that, my mother and I had to live in hiding, and my mother died protecting me. At that time, he told Fiona that until now, I still cannot forgive the person who killed my mother. Then she gently hugged and comforted him, saying, you will definitely be happy. I really cherish you, do you know that? At that moment, Fiona's pain, anger, hatred, and resentment were all eased and drained away. He also wondered if without Fiona, could he continue to live peacefully? Returning to him, he said to her, "Fiona, now I am alone in a strange place. Moreover, enemies surround me from all directions. Of course, I want to have a longtime friend by my side, don't I?" She replied. "But the Duke is here too." He looked at her intently with a somewhat funny expression and asked, "Do you really think I will be comforted emotionally by Aben Billen?" She imagined the scene of two dry men hugging each other, showing affection and comforting each other, goosebumps rising all over just thinking about it. Just imagining it feels weird. But she suddenly remembered he also has the female lead, then turned away. She teased him. "But Siren, now you can soon meet your beautiful, destined girl," he mumbled. "My destined girl?" "Yes," she replied. "Siren is really slow." "I mean love," she said casually. He was silent, and the atmosphere suddenly fell into quietness. "At this moment," he sadly said, "considering your thoughts, maybe now I am really a nuisance." She ran after him to explain. "Not now." He rushed past her, about to leave, but stopped and said, "No, I understand, because most people think like that about me. Anyway, maybe I made an unreasonable proposal. Just forget it." She felt struck by lightning and felt like she heard Siren's pride shatter, thinking to herself, "He seems hurt now." At this moment he reached the door and said, "I'm going now." She called after him, but he didn't wait. In her heart, she blamed herself for being too serious. Why? Anyway, now Siren invites her at the age just graduated from BA. Just nonsense, who knows? She shouted, "All right then, I will be by your side." At this moment, she no longer worried too much and just smiled and continued, "If my presence can help you, I will be relaxed inside. Yes, it's nothing to lose for me anyway." Siren heard that affirmation from her and stopped. From her angle, she didn't see that he was smiling contentedly, thinking he really is soft-hearted, and still cherishes her as before. He turned back, smiled brightly at her, and said, "Yes, I know." She silently felt lucky, thinking, luckily he seems more at ease because he has someone familiar here. Time passed peacefully like that. Soon it was time for the principal to start. The day of the royal ball was approaching. Siren, in an elaborate gown, stepped into the room. He spoke, "Fiona," Aben said to get ready to go down. Fiona was helped by a servant to prepare her outfit. She replied, "Ah, yes, it's already time, huh?" She turned her face. Wearing a magnificent blue gown that was still cute with platinum hair and red eyes, she was not only more beautiful than usual, she said to him, "I will come down immediately." He looked at her, his face suddenly blushing. The sound of footsteps going down the stairs of a man and a woman echoed loudly, with someone asking about Fiona. "Aben intends to officially introduce him today, right?" Those two are Fiona and Sigrun walking side by side. Both wore elegant outfits with some similarities, like matching clothes. She spoke up to answer. "Surely not," I said. "Let's leave it for next time," he mumbled in response. Then after that, Siren turned his face away, exhaled, scratched his head, and said, "I want to escort you, but it's really a pity." His words made her burst out laughing. "You can do as you please." Suddenly, a voice called out from behind, catching both their attention. Both of you seem too comfortable, huh?" Aben stood there with arms crossed, looking at the two and said, "Kids, playtime is over. The stone must roll by itself. The first stone rolls with me." Siren felt annoyed and muttered in his head, "The stone?" Meanwhile, Fiona sighed and said, Yes, yes. The first stone rolled here, and an accident happened. Maybe because she was wearing high heels, she carelessly slipped, her whole body staggering and falling forward. She only managed to utter a sound with a panicked face at that moment. In front of her were the stairs. She thought she would fall to the floor, losing balance, but the incident did not happen like that. Fiona was caught tightly by Siren and Aben, their faces as panicked as hers. Then she was gently set down. Acting cautiously, she spoke with a little fear. "That was almost an accident. Thank you both." While she was speaking, a voice interrupted sharply but worriedly. "You have to be careful." Aben just clicked his tongue, then Fiona and he turned their backs and left. He said, "Hold my arm until you get used to walking." It was unknown whether Fiona ignored those words or not. Siren was still advising her to be careful when walking. She hummed a few times, then waved her hand to say, "I know." Aben spoke, "Let's go to the carriage this way." When Fiona and he sat in the carriage under the night sky. He smiled and curiously said, "I just remembered, Fiona. I heard you decided to stay here. You must have been seduced by that kid Sigrun, huh?" She just forced a smile and looked away, replying, "I can't ignore my friend's loneliness." Fiona crossed her arms and continued, "You know you have to take over the family business, Heelong. But it seems you want to step back, huh? Halong, even without me?" "It's okay," Abin replied. "Now that I remember, aren't you curious why I chose you?" She thought silently to herself. Because she knew Abin's situation well. According to the storyline, Abin is of royal blood but hates the Emperor. Because the current Emperor has killed and exiled all blood relatives who could threaten him. When young, those were the swords that made others bleed. Abin's family was also a victim. If Abin had a child, that child would also carry royal blood, and, no matter the obstacles, would have the right to inherit. But the child would be strictly controlled and its life threatened. Suddenly, he raised his hand toward her and said, "Fiona." Then, seeing her resigned and weary face, he continued, "No matter what, from now on your name will be Fiona Hilong." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and replied, "I know." Abin slightly shifted and said amidst her confusion, "Be happy and from now on call me father." Fiona looked at his smug face and answered, "You are really persistent." When their carriage arrived at the majestic, splendid castle, night had already fallen. Inside the castle, the band skillfully and professionally created melodious sounds from violins. The interior was even more dazzling with crystal-like chandeliers. The banquet table was meticulously prepared with delicious delicacies and flowers that stirred the heart. Curious nobles chatted. Someone asked, "Have you heard? That illegitimate child will come here today." In another corner, a young lady was laughing and talking with her friend. "Be careful what you say. There are rumors that His Majesty will officially make him a prince," she said with a teasing tone. "I heard he's very handsome," the other young lady exclaimed. "Oh my. I also heard he's very dangerous." The two did not know their conversation was overheard by a red-haired woman holding a fan. Hiding Kyodirm's smile on her lips, the young lady continued, "Which makes sense since he comes from the arid Halong." The woman with red hair holding a fan to cover her mouth smiled towards Fiona. Noticing the stare that was intense but friendly, along with her captivating beauty, Fiona felt as if struck by a mesmerizing arrow. She turned her back and used both hands to cover her blushing face, thinking silently that the older sister wasn't looking at Sigrun but at herself. Then she ran to stand hiding behind Abin. Ignoring his curiosity, she kept pondering. No matter what, it was really strange. Wasn't the story supposed to be different from the principal? Then from above came a voice that caught the guest's attention. "Oh, my subjects. Thank you for coming." Abin looked at the speaker and then said to her, "He has appeared." The Emperor continued, "I believe everyone here has heard the good news." With a proud expression, along with a huge crown adorned with countless precious stones and a glass of wine in his hand, he spoke, "My glorious bloodline has achieved tremendous merit in the north. Now step forward, Siren." "My proud son," he sneered coldly, somewhat sarcastic. "Back then, you abandoned me." The Emperor was still laughing joyfully. "Let everyone here see your achievements." As he approached, nodded once, then replied, "I understand, Your Majesty." Next to him appeared someone holding a black object. Feeling solid, looking like stone, Siren said, "It's the heart of the dragon I caught. I offer it to Your Majesty, the ruler of this empire." His voice full of joy. "Oh, you have shown that no matter how strong the monster is, it becomes useless before the great bloodline of the empire." The crowd below murmured, some asking, "Is that really the dragon's heart?" He burst into laughter. "Ha ha, you've seen it, haven't you? The excellence of the royal family and the empire. Below." Fiona pursed her lips, silently judging him, emphasizing bloodline too much. The Emperor continued, "Therefore, I will restore the son who has made great achievements and entered the annals of history to his rightful position." With one hand he pointed at him and said, "Today here, I officially crown Sigrun as prince." He only gave a faint smile, yet it did not diminish his beauty. Applause and laughter erupted. "Congratulations, sir! Blessings to the new prince of the empire!" Watching the scene, clapping repeatedly, Fiona thought, wow, there are many people who secretly dislike him, huh? Truly knowing how to live. Her figure now lurking behind Abin, she thought to herself, compared to those people, someone was grinding their teeth angrily, shaking their legs as they saw the scene. She silently judged the crown prince seemed very dissatisfied to the point of losing control of his expression. Because clearly, when the crown prince appeared, it would threaten his position while Siren was surrounded by praise, not sparing any compliments. The new prince is so cool. Compensating for Enoch, who is also the crown prince. No one paid attention except to glare angrily. Her thoughts continued. If in reality it played out like in the story, he would become the villainous supporting character who bullies the protagonist. Enoch's inner self screamed and rushed to him, immediately grabbing that guy. Give him to me. Fiona pondered that. Surely Sigrun and Eunice already knew how to resolve it. She joined the applause, smiling brightly at him. Mouthing Sigrun, he curiously paid attention to her thoughts. Fiona gave a thumbs up, winked without making a sound, saying, "You're so cool." That simple action made him blush deeply. He turned away quickly to hide his face. She still stood there, giving him 2 likes. Aben beside her looked stunned and said, "Well done." The symphony of music, the enchantment of the violin played as Siren stood in the great hall, people flocking to him. Someone asked, "Sir, how did you catch the dragon? You're truly brave." Near her and Aben, some people also jostled to approach a man who asked, "Duke Halo, how did you meet the prince?" Then that person noticed Fiona, who was forcing a smile standing beside him. "Who is the young lady beside you?" Aben answered calmly. "I will clarify during the meeting of the 5 families." The young lady next door covered her mouth with a fan and whispered to the person beside her. She only said, "At the mid-year meeting of the founding families." Indeed, a bastard child SAO. Fiona thought sadly, "Hey, I heard everything." Then she said to Aben, "I'm going outside for some fresh air." He replied, "Okay, go ahead." Outside, tonight's sky had many stars shining brightly in the dark. She leaned on the railing and sighed deeply, then stood there enjoying the refreshing breeze. Her long hair flowing in the wind, Fiona exclaimed it felt like being reborn. Her silhouette could easily be seen through the glass door. She thought, she didn't expect to be noticed so much herself. They really liked to meddle in others' affairs. Then a clicking sound rang out. She slightly turned around, wondering who had come. "Is someone here?" "Yes." They were talking Ravi. "SAO, why don't you stop pushing me away and slowly come closer to me?" A voice replied. "Maybe don't call me by my first name, but call me Lady Priscilla, okay?" That voice caught Fiona's attention. She thought to herself, "Priscilla?" Then gently lifted the curtain to look. The man continued, "I said being arrogant is fine, but behaving too rudely is boring." The woman with red hair raised her fan to cover her mouth and replied, "Sir, that's too much." Fiona was surprised and silently asked what was that about. The identities of those 2 surprised her. It was the Crown Prince and Libya Priscilla who was turning her back, while Enoch stood behind her, provoking, "If you please me, you could become the Crown Princess." But she turned away and left, leaving the unwilling Crown Prince with the words, "Your Highness, I request permission to return here." Enoch angrily shouted at her. Then he raised his hand to grab Libya's slender hands. That action made her drop the fan in her hand. He questioned, "How dare you go anywhere without the Crown Prince's permission?" Fiona, who was hiding behind the curtain, frowned at the scene. He continued to get angry, grabbing Libya's hand, saying, "Even though SAO has overlooked you lately just because you are beautiful." The curtain was thrown aside, hitting the Buddha statue in the wind. The one who did it was Fiona, pretending to be naive, saying, "Lady Libya, come out here." That action surprised the 2. She stepped closer and continued, "Earlier the Duke Priscilla was urgently looking for you. I am also helping the Duke find you." The Crown Prince looked annoyed at her and said, "Who are you to dare interfere?" Fiona pretended to be surprised, exclaimed, "Oh my, Your Highness, the Crown Prince is here too." Then she politely performed a bowing ritual. "I respectfully greet Your Highness, the Crown Prince. I am Fiona Halo." Enoch released Libya's hand and repeated in confusion, "Halo," when bowing. No one noticed she was smiling, thinking to herself, even if he is the Crown Prince, he wouldn't easily mess with the Halo family. And she also thanked Aben with a "Thank you, Duke." At that moment, Libya rushed to hug her tightly, continuing the act. She said, "That's right. Father said he had something to discuss with me. I completely forgot." With her stunning beauty, Libya gently continued, "Thank you for looking for me, Lady Fiona." Before such floral beauty, Fiona could only clench her hands, as if wanting to cry, praising her inwardly. "So beautiful. I would search for you 100,000 times." Then Libya turned to Enoch, her attitude changing 180 degrees, coldly said, So, 7 bows then, your highness. His face darkened, he grunted, slammed the door and left, cursing damn it. Fiona, held by Libya's arm, could only force a smile, then expressed her thoughts. Maybe your highness will come looking again, so let's link arms for a while. Then she paused a few beats, then raised her hand to offer the fan from earlier, saying, I secretly picked it up earlier. Libya looked surprised at the fan in her hand, then took it back. I smiled and said thank you. She also smiled, but inwardly still couldn't resist, silently exclaiming how beautiful. She said, shall we go now? Libya softly replied yes, then the two linked arms and walked away, clopping footsteps. No one knew that. Libya was having her own thoughts. Although the crown prince really troubled me, he helped me meet an unexpected fate. Then she secretly looked toward her, thinking the evil mage of Halo, mixed with music and noisy voices at the party. Libya, now linking arms with Fiona, said, from here on, there should be no more problems. Fiona replied yes. With so many people, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince can't do anything. Libya, let go of my hand. Saying that, she then bowed in the manner of a noble lady. Excuse me for the late introduction. I am Libya Priscilla. Fiona also politely bowed in return. And I am Fiona Halo. One can't help but say, these two young ladies are truly beautiful and captivating. Libya couldn't help but ask curiously, is this the first time you've met Lady Fiona? At the noble party, she replied, because until now I have only been in Halo. This is also my first time attending a party in the capital. Libya smiled. Hello, it really is a place that attracts a lot of curiosity. She didn't know what else to say and could only respond like that. Libya said to her, anyway, I want to repay you, lady, because you helped me. My family is planning to host a small tea party. May I invite you to attend? She asked hesitantly. A tea party? In her mind, she thought, a tea party hosted by Libya herself? Generally, it is a place any noble lady would want to be invited to, and Libya seemed afraid she would refuse. She continued, repaying you with this might not be entirely appropriate, but that tea party will help Lady Fiona quickly adapt to the noble society. Fiona could only respond, since you say so, lady, I gladly accept the invitation with gratitude. Before leaving, Libya turned and said to her, I am the one who should be thanking you. I will send the official invitation card to the Halo Mansion later. Fiona waved her hand and replied, yes. At that moment she suddenly realized something. She had inadvertently become friends with Libya. This was different from the rules. She wondered if it was okay. Meanwhile, the crown prince angrily slammed the wine glass on the table and shouted, they're all equally worthless. He panted heavily, thinking, Libya Priscilla, I like her. Because of her beautiful appearance and strong family background, she was the perfect woman to stand beside him. If the Priscilla family always remained neutral and sided with him, surely his position would be further strengthened. The more he thought, the angrier he became. She could even become the crown princess. Isn't that an advantage for her? Yet she dared to continuously refuse me? While except for my father, I am the highest noble in this empire. Thinking of this, he lost all calm. He stood up abruptly and said to himself, if she dares refuse me one more time, I will say. Then he realized something. It was Fiona standing in the hall. At that moment, she caught his eye. He smiled shamelessly. Oh ho, that's Fiona Halo. Now looking back, she is quite beautiful. Before him was Fiona smiling sweetly, making him silently admire her rare platinum hair in the capital and her sharp red eyes. Her slender figure further stimulated his protective instincts. I have no memory of Duke Halo marrying anyone, he smiled, but not genuinely. Certain she was illegitimate. Then playing with that girl a little won't be a problem, right? Fiona Halo, illusions appeared in his mind, imagining that after having her, he would discard her and she would have to kneel and cry begging, please don't abandon me. At that time he would shirk all responsibility. I have played with her. Although our ranks differ, she is too troublesome. Lost in his delusions, he laughed to himself like a madman, muttering, not bad at all. At that moment, Siren coincidentally came over and called, Your Highness, what are you doing here? The crown prince was startled. Being called out, he was shaken. Siren conveniently asked, Who are you looking at, Your Highness? The crown prince got angry. He angrily glanced at Siren and scolded, You started talking without greeting first. You seem to have only half noble blood, so you don't know basic manners, huh? Siren was silent for a moment, looking at this incompetent older brother. He sighed inwardly. Yet I once paid attention to his actions. The Crown Prince still mocked, pointing at Siren's face. Answer me quickly. Not waiting for Siren to reply, he shifted his gaze to the party hall. He asked, Right, you are also from Halo, aren't you? Then you must know that girl, right? The girl with red eyes and platinum hair. Following the Crown Prince's gaze, Sigrun also looked. She discovered the person he was talking about was none other than Fiona, the one in his heart. He realized the person in his mouth was none other than Fiona, the one in his heart. Sigrun's face darkened as he coldly asked the prince, unaware that the temperature around him had dropped considerably. He replied, She's quite pretty. I want to keep her by my side. Lately, I've been a bit bored anyway. Siren's cold voice said, That's a pitiful excuse. Not even worth responding to. The Crown Prince, angry, asked what was said, then grabbed Siren's shirt and shouted, You insolent brat! Arn was not free either, swinging a fist at his face while scolding. How dare you speak like that to the Crown Prince's brother? But Siren, with years of monster fighting experience, how could he let this stupid Crown Prince? I touch a single hair on him? He gently caught the Crown Prince's punch with one hand, holding his fist tightly, mocking. Keep trying, huh? Held tightly by Siren, the prince angrily shouted, Let go, but to no avail. He yelled, You damn brat! Let go! Siren's cold gaze looked at this useless brother and said, Oh, is it my turn now? The Crown Prince was startled, not waiting for his reaction. Siren grabbed his collar. He fearfully stepped back, stammering, Wait, hold on. Before he could finish, Siren pressed him against the wall. Let me warn you once. I don't care about your position or the throne. With one hand holding his collar, Siren gently lifted him up as he struggled, gasping for breath. He said, There is only one thing I desire in this world. In his mind was the image of Fiona, smiling sweetly. His voice was grave as he warned him, but if he dared to touch that girl, Siren released his grip and let him collapse to the ground. I don't care who you are, AI or not, I will do everything I can to make you die the most painful death, brother. The Crown Prince's face was full of fear. Perhaps he would forever remember today's scene at the Halo Mansion. Fiona's hand was pouring a full glass of wine. She raised the glass and gulped it down, silently cursing. That Crown Prince drives me crazy, she thought, trying to change her mood. Her face flushed from the wine as she sweetly praised. At that moment, a knock on the door was heard, along with a voice asking if Fiona was there. No need to guess. It was Sigrun's voice. He entered, now dressed down from his elaborate ceremonial clothes to a simple outfit but still exuding elegance. He asked about the smell of wine. Are you drinking? She replied, Just warming my throat a bit. Then, she pulled his hand to leave. Fiona's mood was cheerful again. She wore a light dress, cute and pure-looking. He frowned slightly, thinking, This girl sits alone in room 2 drinking wine, and even casually drags someone else to drink with her. Does she not realize how dangerous this room is? He stepped closer to ask, but stopped abruptly, caught by her beautiful, staring face. She asked, What were you going to say? He gave up. Nothing. She said, Nothing? Then why? Her eyes stopped at his collar, which was slightly open. She laughed. Ha ha, your tie. What happened? Did you grab someone's collar and fight AI? He calmly replied. Something like that. She was shocked, thinking, grabbing someone's collar? On the very first day meeting the nobles? He's not that kind of person. Then she doubted herself. Wait, is that true? She angrily asked him about AI. At that moment, she looked a bit cute. He acted as if it was nothing. It's no big deal, he said. As she reached to fix it, he paused, waited a moment, then softly called Fiona. She was puzzled. He slightly bowed and said, It's too dark, I can't see clearly. Sorry. But could you smile for me? She said nothing but raised her hand to Sigrun's collar. Thinking, since childhood, Sigrun hated touching her collar. She reluctantly said, Okay. Thinking, just helping to take it off. The silence was broken only by the clicking of the clasp she was undoing. Suddenly, he reached out and stroked a lock of her hair, which startled her. She wondered, why is he doing that? He glanced at her then. She was embarrassed, her face slightly pink, thinking, why is the atmosphere suddenly so strange? Just take it off quickly. She quickly took off the shirt for him and said, There. All done. Now let's drink. He acted as if nothing happened, saying, Drink slowly. You get drunk easily. She took a sip and asked, Did you really fight AI? He answered, The Crown Prince. She was surprised and asked again, Really? He explained, He's more annoying than me. She gulped and replied, That's right, he's really unpleasant, he said. Don't go near him. She immediately replied, I know. Now she was getting drunk, her face red, still pouring wine continuously. Suddenly, she pointed at his face. Siren, your face is doubled. He sighed. I'm drunk. But she seemed to heed his words. Face down on the table but still said, I'm not drunk. He shook the wine glass, looked at her, then gently said to drink slowly. At this moment he lifted her up. She was unconscious, her head resting on his chest, breathing evenly. She had fallen asleep. He looked at her and said to himself, not knowing what others truly feel, he just let her sleep and took her to bed. Carefully pulled the blanket back, gazed at her for a while, then spoke to himself again sometimes. I want to open your head and see what you're thinking. You don't expect anything from me. After all, why, from the first day we met until now, you have always cherished me. No feeling is worthless. I still can't fully understand you. It seems like you don't long for or have anything particularly important, like a dandelion floating on the wind that can't settle or take root anywhere. I wish one day you would also go search for something you desire. No matter what, at this moment he blew out the candle, closed the door, and still kept thinking, at least at this moment, dream. The happiest dream, my most important girl. In the room at this moment she couldn't hear his thoughts. She had fallen asleep long ago. Scene change. Fiona and Aben were sitting in a carriage. Both seemed to be going somewhere, she worried, and asked Aben, What if Siren is rejected in the palace? What should we do, Duke? Duke Aben smiled faintly and replied, That brat is the one who needs to worry if he gets bullied. No need to worry. The brat has been officially recognized as a prince. Instead, worry about the upcoming meeting of the 5 clans, about to take place. Both were on their way to attend the 5 clans meeting. A brief introduction about the 5 clans meeting. This is a periodic meeting, including representative clans, who founded the Fiona Empire. At this moment she silently sighed inside with some unease. Even so, I still worry about Sigren. She looked toward the mansion ahead and wondered if that was the mansion where the meeting would take place. At this moment she didn't know that because of an incident at that meeting, she would meet the female lead of the Eunice principal and get involved in an unexpected matter. The sun rose high over a magnificent palace. Duke Aben was pointing at Fiona and instructing, No matter what you say, Duke Ernest will oppose it anyway, so just ignore him. Fiona at this moment wore a somewhat formal outfit. With her hair tied high, both were preparing to attend the 5 great clans meeting ceremony. She heard the Duke's arrogant words, and helplessly asked, Is it okay to behave like that toward the Queen's clan? Both spoke while walking. He also replied to her, after hearing that she was speechless, thinking to herself, Duke Aben's words aren't wrong. The Heiress clan supports the Crown Prince, so they will definitely confront Halo. But can we just ignore them? While pondering, she heard the Duke continue speaking. Not only Heiress, the entire Heiress clan supports the Crown Prince, so just ignore them, she continued. What about the Priscilla and Clovis clans? He replied they are neutral. Those 2 clans just stand aside and watch. In her mind appeared 2 people she had met in the clans, Priscilla and Clovis. Silently she thought, Oh, so that's how it is, although the truth is I already roughly guessed that. At this moment both had arrived. A servant bowed and opened the door inviting them in. Please come in, Duke Halo. Everyone is inside. While both entered, he kept talking. So Fiona, in short, she looked at him suspiciously. In short, with his handsome sparkling face and faint smile, he uttered a very casual sentence. Just act as you wish. She was speechless with this convenient adoptive father. Thinking it was truly a proverb fitting Aben, at this moment the door fully opened. The space was filled with light and solemnity. In the center of the room was a hexagonal table surrounded by 6 noble-style chairs. 4 of the 6 seats were occupied. One of them spoke, You're here, Duke Halo. The Duke also approached the empty chair and sat down, casually replied, I'm the latest to arrive, huh? Fiona also followed the Duke to the remaining chair and sat down. She silently evaluated, Wow, look at that atmosphere. Then continued to glance in another direction to analyze. Surely the person full of dissatisfaction was Duke Ernest. Sitting next to him was Marquis Ernest. On the side, Aben was Marquis Priscilla, and she looked at a man with orange hair and yellow eyes, silently thinking the person will soon know my identity. Marquis Arend Clovis also looked at her in surprise, staring intently. She silently lamented and sighed. Why do I have to sit opposite him like this? At that moment, a questioning voice rang out. Duke Halo, I don't know who the young lady sitting next to you is. This is a place only for the head of the family and the heir to attend. The Duke closed his eyes leisurely and replied, just as I was about to introduce. Then he gestured towards her to introduce. This is Fiona Halo, my heir, he announced like a lightning strike, brushing past the ears of some nobles. Duke Ernest and Marquis Eric showed clearly grimaced expressions. Marquis Clovis seemed to be processing the information and repeated, the heir? Marquis Eric asked, your biological daughter? Duke Aben replied, no, she is an adopted daughter. Marquis Eric then asked, so which family is she originally from? Fiona answered on behalf of the Duke. The Green family, sir. She thought silently. Even so, this matter can be investigated and found out quickly. Duke Ernest frowned and asked again, the Green family? Isn't that the family suspected of drug involvement, so all members of the family are currently under investigation? Although I heard that except for one daughter who is married, she was exempted from charges. At this moment, Marquis Clovis slowly raised his teacup and said, no, they have another daughter. I am responsible for the Green family affairs, so I know very well. Fiona had no intention to hide and continued, yes, everyone probably already guessed somewhat. I am the illegitimate child of the Green family. The reason I was exempted from punishment is because I withdrew from the Green family registry, the Duke said at this moment. Feeling seriously insulted, his whole body trembled, thinking not only born from a bankrupt family, but also an illegitimate child? Moreover, just a newly grown girl, how should the family be handed to a son according to principle? Thinking of this, his face darkened with anger and asked, are you testing us, Duke? Duke Halo replied to him, how could it be otherwise? That guy angrily responded, I cannot accept it. An illegitimate child from a bankrupt family inheriting the position of Duke of Halo. Yes, the Halo family is one of the key families of the Empire. If you act arrogantly like this, where is the discipline of the nobility? Duke Aben comfortably leaned back in his chair and replied, I'm also curious how discipline will be established here, but I definitely must pass the position to my daughter. The Duke's mocking attitude made these guys extremely irritated, while Fiona helplessly thought, so brutal. Anyway, I know what Duke Ernest is thinking. He is a very stubborn person, from the fact that I am a child from another marriage, to the fact that I am just his daughter. He absolutely cannot recognize any aspect of me. If this continues, he will definitely get very angry. Thinking this, she smiled and said, Your Grace, Duke Ernest, I completely understand why you feel uneasy. You worry that if I take over the family with limited ability, it will be very difficult, right? As a member of the nobility, Duke Ernest replied, Exactly, you understand better than me, Duke. She asked again, So how must I prove my ability to make you no longer uneasy? Duke Ernest slammed the table and shouted, Prove it? A child like you, what do you know how to do? Then he suddenly realized and thought, no, that's good too. He sneered and said to her, Halo is the shield of the Empire. Since it is the territory of that region, naturally you must fight monsters. You must win the upcoming hunting contest. Duke Ernest continued, If you win, I will not interfere in this matter anymore. In his head, he silently thought, It's quiet as a clam now, huh? That's right. A girl who has never held a sword, let alone fight monsters. Then he imagined in his head the scene of Duke Aben, seeing his adopted daughter facing monsters and feeling distressed. He continued thinking, just seeing the monster's tail, she probably would faint. A good chance to embarrass Duke Halo. Suddenly, at this moment, he heard her reply, Fine. He was full of question marks. She continued, I will win the hunting contest. She smiled brightly, thinking surprisingly easy beyond expectations. At this moment, Marquis Clovis also contributed. Then we will testify to the Duke's proposal. Meanwhile, that guy, Eric's servant, was suddenly pulled into the situation, awkwardly responding like that. Meanwhile, Duke Ernest was sweating because of the piano's reaction. Unlike what he thought, he nervously asked, Do you understand what it means to eliminate a monster? She still smiled and replied, Of course I understand. I won't run away or look for a place to hide. So please don't worry, I will handle it cleanly. Scene transition. She was washing her hands. Recalling the earlier event, she sighed in relief. Luckily, the meeting ended peacefully. She left the restroom. Looking around for Duke Halo but not seeing him, she thought to herself, maybe the Duke had gone down earlier.